Good morning, Digit fam. Adam Dowd here with an insomnia-fueled trip through the world of tech of the day. That's right, when all of you were laying down your heads to sleep, my head suddenly thought of about 16,000 things that required my immediate attention, so here we are. As promised, it's time for the next installment of Vacation Tech that I ran into, brought to you by our rented 2019 Toyota Camry. This podcast not brought to you by Toyota. The in-dash infotainment system in the Camry is really nice. It's called Entune 3.0 and it comes with a touchscreen. Overall, I'm not crazy thrilled about touchscreens in cars, but this one kind of does it right. There are physical buttons around the periphery that you can use to get to different areas, music, connections, etc. Plus, the interface allows you to navigate the content on your phone, so you can pick whatever podcast you want to listen to, like, the Digit Daily. I'm not judging, but that's what you should pick every time, right? Right. The controls themselves were easy to find and quite responsive. I've used some dog touchscreens in the past, so it's nice to see one that works so well, though to be fair, I'd kind of like to see how this works during a harsh Chicago winter. But overall, Toyota is doing some nice work here, which is great. So let's get on with the podcast, shall we? It is June 24th, 2019, and this is your Digit Daily. Do you like pie? I'm honestly not much of a pie guy myself, though I do love some banana cream pie on occasion, and I like the idea of the raspberry pie, even if I don't partake myself. And of course, I'm not talking about a fruit-filled pastry. I'm talking about the mini computer, because we have a new Raspberry Pi available on the market today, and it's still just $35. Now, if you don't know what a Raspberry Pi is, allow me to explain. A Raspberry Pi is basically a tiny little computer that tinkers and hackers and educators can use to create projects that require a certain amount of computing power for not a lot of money. It's basically a circuit board with all the I/O you need to connect up a monitor or a keyboard, but it's not really designed to be a computer. I won't be writing the Digit Daily on a Raspberry Pi, and I certainly wouldn't be able to edit or record one. You can use it as a sort of budget-friendly computer, but honestly, you probably shouldn't. Here's what the latest version will give you. You'll get USB 3.0, Gigabit Ethernet, Wi-Fi 802.11 AC, Bluetooth 5.0, up to 4 gigabytes of RAM, and up to 2 4K outputs. The processor comes with 4 Cortex A72 cores capable of running at 1.5 gigahertz. Now, if all that sounds impressive, it is, especially considering the $35 price tag. But Tom's Guide reports that the Pi is capable of running barely up to 15 Chromium browser tabs, or the average number of tabs I run while writing the Digit Daily. It's also capable of some light photo editing using GIMP. According to The Verge, the unit struggles to play back a full-screen YouTube video unless you knock the resolution down to 480p. So now, this is not going to be your next computer, but you can put together some neat projects with a Pi. I run into them most often as part of gadget geocaches out in the wild. You can program in some basic functions and make people input, a song correctly to open a box, or figure out a combination to open a box, or things like that. Very often, Raspberry Pis can be used for servers for media or printing, things like that. A Raspberry Pi can store as much info as the hard drive you attach to it, and the processing power needed to serve up a movie isn't all that much, so it's a pretty common use. MakeUseOf.com and IT Pro both have compiled lists of projects that you can build yourself if you're so inclined. Some of them are pretty cool, though I have to confess, I won't be picking one up. I'm just not that much of a tech tinkerer. I mean, if you want me to build you a floating shelf, that's a project I can do. But putting together a CPU-powered tech project is just not the kind of geek that I am, and I'm fine with that. We'll let the awesome kids like Gary Sims over on Gary Explains dive into the depths of Raspberry possibilities, while we head on over into the Roundup! It's almost July, which puts us about 6 weeks out from the launch of the Galaxy Note 10, arguably one of the most anticipated phones of the year. Android Authority has a good roundup of rumors and speculation on what we'll see. 5G for sure. Headphone jack? Yeah, maybe not. Man, I hope they don't ditch the headphone jack. That would be incredibly disappointing, especially considering the phone will probably come in at around $1,000. Studies have shown that it is literally impossible to plug in a USB Type-A plug correctly the first time. It's simply not possible, and don't say it is, because it's not. Well, it turns out that Intel kinda knew about this when they released the plug back in 1996, but they opted for this design for a simple reason. Cost savings. In order to have a reversible connector, you would have required twice the wiring, twice the connections, so they opted instead for a rectangular design with a 50-50 shot of getting it right. Of course, now we know it's not a 50-50 shot, it's just impossible, which is a shame. Last week, Facebook announced its Libra cryptocurrency based on blockchain voodoo magic. You might be wondering, well, how does it work? And Gary Sims from Gary Explains wondered that very same thing, and then he went and made a video explaining it because that's how Gary do. So check out the link in the show notes and learn all about the Libras. Amateur photographers live their lives hoping for that one awesome shot. And sadly, I've already gotten mine a couple years back at Niagara Falls. Well, Craig Turton got his the other night when he captured a meteor falling to the Earth in an image that is right out of Star Trek Discovery. Turton nabbed the 15-second exposure just as the meteor broke apart in the atmosphere, producing a gorgeous shot, sure to make Instagrammers jealous beyond reason. You know the phrase, if you're using a service for free, then you are the product? Well, a bill introduced into legislation over the weekend might finally allow you to put a price tag on yourself. This bill would require big tech companies to lay out exactly what data it collects from you and what it'll be used for, and the approximate worth of that data, which would be hella interesting for sure. I'm guessing I'm worth about $6 a month to Twitter, but only about $2.50 for Instagram because my tweets are clever AF, and my photos are, I guess, a little boring. I guess I'll have to go start photographing meteors or something. Ooh, gotta be careful with this one. Ravelry is a social network for knitters, which really just proves that if you look long enough on the internet, you'll find groups for anything. That is, unless you are a knitting Donald Trump supporter, because if you are, that stuff will not fly in the knitting community. In an effort to stay neutral on the subject, which, let's face it, if you're a regular listener, you know I'm definitely not neutral on this, but anyway. Here's what Ravelry had to say in a blog post. Quote, "We cannot provide a space that is inclusive of all and allow support for open white supremacy. Support of the Trump administration is undeniably in support of white supremacy." Which, okay, there's a lot of rhetoric there that we're not going to dive into. I think we can all agree that white supremacy is bad. But my question is simply one of logistics, like, what changed? Let's put aside political allegiances here just for a second and look at this from a logical perspective. Whether or not it's actually true, the Trump administration has been labeled as a white supremacist administration for years now. This is not a new thing, and again, I can't say this enough. Whether or not it actually is not the question here. The perception has been there for years. What changed to finally make Ravelry stand up and say no now? That's the part I don't get. It's not like there were any major happenings over the weekend that would have made people stand up and take notice. I don't know, I guess my speculation just ends here, but this really feels more like a PR move than an actual stance against anything. And finally, the Curiosity rover has detected a spike in methane levels on Mars. And no, honey, I did not go to Mars recently, so you can just stop that right now. But the methane levels could point to life on Mars, or not. Current speculation has it that microbes could be producing the methane as a byproduct of life, and methane has a relatively short lifespan on the red planet, so it must have been produced recently. And of course, by recently, scientists mean within the last few hundred years or so. Everything is relative, after all. So that is going to do it for today's Digit Daily. If you'd like to learn more about any of these stories, check out the links in the show notes and subscribe to our daily newsletter on Digit.com. And if you like what you heard, subscribe, leave a review, and don't forget to tell your friends about DigitDailyPod.com. Once again, I'm Adam Dowd, Dead Technology on Twitter, and we'll talk again tomorrow.